Viewer discretion is advised.
Move, I'd say.
Well, I mean, it was something that was done a long time ago, but we'd gotten away from it. So you're right. It from the tech perspective, it's usually people coming up with names that are just unusual that grab you. So
Yeah. Yes, exactly. They have a team of people, right, that create these names of companies that will
right.
attention.
Yep.
Yeah.
Build your brand kind of stuff.
So how did you guys meet? Like, what were the circumstances? Just walking down the street or in a
actually,
bar?
I was just so I was out with a girlfriend of mine. We were working together. So I was a working girl in Miami, and I had been there for 2 years in Miami for 2 years. I was a working girl for I was coming up on my 10th year. That was about 9.5 years when I met John. So anyways, we were actually leaving, going to go, excuse me, darling. Thank you. Look at, he can't help, but he has to get on camera.
Well, he can get on camera. That's fine.
Well,
if he wants to sit there
it's
with
all
you.
about you, but if you'd
What's
like
up,
him
John?
next to you, that's great.
Nice to see you again.
Hi.
I am so fucking sorry.
It's okay. Okay. But so we were leaving to go get to our car, which was parked nearby John's hotel, which was the Beacon Hotel on South Beach. And I passed by him on the corner. He was talking to a gentleman. And as I walked by, we locked eyes, and I smiled and he smiled. And then when I passed, I turned around and I looked back and he was looking at my ass. And so I kind of
That sounds about right.
So yeah, exactly. So he got caught and he was not ashamed of it. So, it was just a nice little, but I kept it moving. I wasn't, he didn't seem like he was interested. So I just kept going. And then the security gentleman at his hotel came out and, was just telling us girls, what the night was looking like, if it was busy, where the police were,
Right.
and so he's like, well, you know who that is? You just walked past John McAfee. And I'm like, well, who the fuck is that? And so he said, well, the McAfee antivirus? And I said, yes, I do. And he said, well, that's the man who created it. And I said, oh, really? And so, of course, the wheels get to turning. And I just thought, you know what? Fuck it. Why not? Let's see where this goes. And so we jogged back a little bit because I didn't see him. So I was like, damn, maybe he's just gone. And I finally caught up to him and he was standing in front of the news cafe, the coffee shop there. And he was smoking a cigarette. So I asked him for a cigarette. And as he was lighting my cigarette, he asked if we girls were out drugging and rolling old men, to which I replied, we don't use drugs. So immediately that just let him know what time it was with me, and him letting me know what time it was with him. Like he was not a mark. And, if that was my intention, he was not the one to try to, make a mark. And so from that, he invited us to sit down. And, of course, me being me, I was just very blunt about it. Listen, do you want some company? We're working. I didn't want to dick around and, oh, what are you doing? Are you vacationing? No, let's just get straight to it, because if you're interested, you're interested. So, and he didn't seem like he was interested in bullshit. So I didn't give him any. And he said, I'm really not looking for any of that right now. I'm really exhausted. I've been having the fight of my life. And I was like, oh, so what's going on with you? And he was kind of taken aback by that, because he's like, are you serious? Like, I've been in the news every day for like a month straight. And the whole world was watching me when I got deported. I'm like, well, I don't watch the news. So,
Right.
Do you want to share your story? And so anyways, we sat and we talked for about 3.5 hours.
Wow.
Just of him telling his story from his side, what was going on. I knew absolutely nothing. So, I mean, when I say absolutely nothing, I knew absolutely nothing. But, the next morning, though, I do remember finding out that he allegedly might have killed his neighbor. And so that was a little unnerving. It was definitely. I was definitely on guard for sure, because I didn't know, I didn't know. He didn't seem like that type of person. And I could say from my perspective, I don't think that that's something. I believe his side of the story. I believe
Right.
that it was something where the government killed him by accident or intentionally, and we're trying to look for John, and maybe whoever they sent went to the wrong house, because there's nothing in John's character that says he's,
Right.
that sort of
Right.
type of person. And that's just what the immediate sense that I got immediately, after just spending a short amount of time with him. So, but yes, that's how we met.
That's awesome. And so you said you'd been in the working life for 9.5 years at that point. So
Yes, ma'am.
so how old were you when you started in that life?
I was 20 years old.
20 years old.
Yeah.
And
So how did you end up in Miami from California?
Oh, that's a long story.
okay. But it's
You can give us the redacted version.
I can tell you how I ended up just in that lifestyle.
Mhm.
Where I even met John.
Yeah.
I think maybe that's more important. But let's see. I was kind of a problem child, just a little bit. And so I was always in trouble, and I found myself pregnant, and I had my first child at 19. And my family is very religious, and my dad every day just made it a point to remind me of the mistake that I had made having a child out of wedlock. And so because of this, I'm wanting to get out of the house just
Right.
as quickly as possible. I don't want to hear it anymore. And so then I happened to meet the gentleman who became later my pimp. And it started
So
off as just, yes.
looking back, you can see now how that happened and
Yes,
how he
very-
manipulated
very
you. Yeah.
Yes, very quickly. And from the beginning, it was a grooming sort of idea that he had in his mind. Just looking back on it, I was being groomed from the very first moment that he spoke to me. And so when you see it like that, it's kind of a harder pill to swallow. Like, how did I fall for that? Because looking at me now, you wouldn't think that I would have been someone who allowed someone to put their hands on me in such violent ways. But that happened. I wish, if I saw him now, I'd say try it now. Then it's a
Right.
different story now.
Right.
It's a different story, but it's yes.
What are those things looking back now that you see as red flags now that you didn't when you were that age?
Just the need to isolate me from my friends and my family, from my daughter, just to have me, separate from them, finding
Uh-huh.
reasons, oh, they don't like me, or, just trying to get me further and further away from a support system.
Uh-huh.
And just the anger was very immediate, and it was explosive, but it wasn't violent at first, and that should have been, a major red flag to me, just because it'd be little small things, and he'd blow up about it, and then, of course it's, well, I'm sorry, I'm just stressed out, blah blah blah.
So he was putting off what his anger was, his anger and other things to manipulate
of course,
you.
playing sort of Prince Charming, sort of, kind of wearing that fake veneer, sort of plastic mask, not showing, the true colors of
So
himself.
when was your breaking point? When did you decide that you were done with that life and you wanted to pursue a life with John?
I wouldn't say that there was a moment exactly. I would say that there was many little moments that led up to the final decision, or the final choosing, I should say, not the decision, but the choosing, because the act of choosing, where you actively, change your behaviors so that you are, anyways. So I would say, yes, it's a thousand little things. Him going into the hospital those times definitely scared the shit out of me.
Just your progressive growth of your relationship really drew you further away.
Yes.
And
Yes, the growth of
would
our relationship, I guess. Yes.
would you say that that's part of perhaps you beginning to see that you didn't have to accept the behaviors that you'd been accepting from people before?
Um, well, at this point, I would say about a year after we met John, or I met John, there was none of those feelings. Like I knew I didn't want to be with my pimp anymore. Like
Okay.
that was not the issue. The
Okay.
issue was how. The issue was
Ah.
keeping my children safe. The issue was the fact that my pimp was okay. So this is a part of the story, so I do have to tell you this so you understand. So my pimp, John and I, after we met, John and I went on a road trip and we drove from Tennessee to Portland. It took us 3 weeks. So
Uh-huh.
on this 3 week journey, in the interim, my pimp had been contacted back in Miami by someone who claimed to be a representative of the cartel, and so I find this out later after I've moved to Portland with John. So this is 4 months into that. So this will take us to April of 2013-ish. And so I hadn't talked to my pimp in months because I actually let John talk to him, and John told him, she doesn't want to be with you anymore. Don't come, don't call and see her, don't talk to her, anything. And that's what it was, no problem. But then John and I got into a fight, and so of course, me being me, I just reached back to what was known to me. And
Right.
so
Right.
that was me calling my pimp. And what happened was I didn't have money because, we fought. And so I left, I didn't have much to stay to take care of myself. And so my pimp was like, okay, well, I know somebody, a client out there that, he's looking for a girl. So let me, I'll put you in contact with him. So when the guy came, we conducted our business. And then afterwards he said, well, my name is, blah, blah, blah. And I was talking with your pimp and, John McAfee, right? And so I said, no, I don't know who you're talking about. And so he's like, well, yeah, you do. I know who your pimp is. His name is, he told me what his name was. And he
Hmm.
said that they had arranged everything and I don't need to worry about anything. Just show up to this hotel and everything will be explained. And so when I got there, he's explaining that he was sent by someone working with the cartel, and they were planning on trying to collect John. And so what they wanted me to do was provide them with information on his daily comings and goings,
Oh,
sort of just
wow.
briefing them on what was going on with him. And so of course, I'm like, I'm not going along with that. This is crazy. Um, of course, then my pimp comes to me and he's like, listen, it'll be over. All you have to do is just give them information. They don't want you to do anything. Listen, they already have our information. And so it's not like you could just tell them no. So you can tell them no, but what's going to happen to you? And then
Right.
they'll just get somebody else. And so this was the dilemma for me. Um, my pimp had upped the ante,
Right.
so to speak, because he had taken the money. I never saw the money. He was paid I believe it's like $100,000 something. But I never saw the money. So I didn't know all of this. I was already signed up, the wheels it was already in motion. And so I just decided to do what I could do to keep him safe, John safe. Oops, sorry.
That's all right.
Off my screen, but to keep John safe, to keep myself safe, my children safe, my family safe, because I didn't really trust John. I didn't know him. So I didn't trust him. I didn't feel comfortable with sharing this information and trusting that, he could keep my family safe.
Right.
Um, and so that, that went on for a few years. It's very long and involved, but um, eventually it worked out where I finally told John what was going on, and he was able to help me completely separate from that situation. So I'm very thankful. Thank you.
So you
And
were
listen, from my standpoint, it was just another day in my life. I mean,
right.
if trivial shit like this bothers a husband, then get out of the marriage, okay?
Right. So you were open with him with what was going on then. You told John
Not immediately, no.
not
But
immediately.
No, I kept that very close to the chest, very close. I lied. I lied. It's all that I could do because I was not going to risk putting my children
Right.
in any sort of harm at all. Because, mind you, my children were living with my parents. I gave them custody because I didn't want to drag them through my mess. You know,
Right.
he was very abusive. It was horrible, and I didn't want to. I didn't want that for them, so I left them with my parents. And so I come back, after with John. This is 2012, and now all of a sudden they're in danger,
Right.
and it's because of me. So I couldn't do that to them. And so, but at the same time, I couldn't allow for their plan to work either, because if something happened to John, it happened to me. Whatever happened to John happened to me. I knew that. I knew I was expendable. I knew I was meant to go. However, they were able to collect John, if that was able to ever happen, I was going to go too. I knew that. And so it was a matter of keeping myself alive as well as keeping him alive. And it was very traumatic, very intense. Um, I became a serious drunk because of it. I almost died just from, the drinking and wanting to just wrap my car around a pole, because it was too
Too
much.
There's just too much.
Living that, living that separate lives, and so intense, it's just, yeah.
So do you see the way it all happened, that it plays out in such a way that it's not really a choice for young women to get caught up in this, is it?
Um,
It is, but it isn't, because you don't really see what's going on, right?
this is true. I mean, there's the aspect of this life where women actually don't have a choice, and that's something completely separate from what I experienced, and from what a lot of the girls that I met there, they chose to be, maybe not necessarily that exact lifestyle, but they chose the gentleman that they
Mm-hmm.
were, their pimp, or
Right.
they chose their girlfriend that told them about this, or they chose, whatever it is, they've made those thousand little steps that found them, where
That
they
led to
were.
that moment.
So how do we educate young women to where they see that these steps lead to that, and to start looking for different answers?
Or ways to avoid
Yeah.
following in those same footsteps.
Um,
What would have kept you from it?
I don't know. I don't know, because there was not just this one thing that led me to it. That's what I'm saying. It's
Yeah.
so complicated. It's so complicated. There is no sort of one size fits all answer.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many, a million little mitigating factors into what causes someone to be on the journey that they're on. And so there's really, like I said, there's just really no one, sort of one size fits all answer
Mm-hmm.
to. You have to take each case by each individual, I think. Um,
Everybody experiences it differently. I got
Right. Well, our government tries to legislate as a whole, and so that's when we run into these problems. They're legislating things doesn't it doesn't answer even a majority of the problem. And
yes, that's correct. That's very true. I think, okay, as an overall issue, then I think it should be legalized. I think
I
prostitution should
agree.
be legalized.
thank
you.
you.
Finally, somebody that agrees with us.
For sure.
Well, if
for
it's
sure.
legalized, then you can have licensing, and you can have education, and you can have safety for
It's
both
safer.
parties.
Yes,
And
it's
that's
much-
my thing on it. It can be
It
it
can
can be
even be
unionized,
unionized.
right? Then you don't have these individual pimps taking advantage of an individual young people, and also you reduce the risk to underage people, in my opinion, if we have that legal system in place. And
most definitely.
a lot of people want to argue against it, but you're arguing against something that's going to happen no matter what. So if it's going to happen no matter what, how about we do it where we can protect people?
Yes, exactly. And if they wanted to, they could tax the girls,
Right.
And so they're getting their money as well, because that's
Right?
what it's all about, the bottom line at the end of the day.
It is, unfortunately, but that's not, because it's not to say there's not people out there who enjoy being in the profession. I'm sure there are. But at this moment, I see what I've seen and studied. A mass majority wind up there from lack of education and understanding in the paths they're leading, lack of family support. Not having a support system really seems to do a number on people.
That's true. That's true.
I think that's a big part of it.
I didn't have
Yeah.
a family support system. Yeah. So
And
that's correct.
then, there's so many things there, there's a million little things, but they boil down to, so if we have the proper mental health care for people, proper choices can be made because they understand their own mental health. And they understand themselves better to make choices better for themselves and all of that. And that's what I was wondering when we came into speaking with you, because sometimes you get people who talk about having been in the life, but it's through this religious context, and that doesn't help us solve problems. I mean, it's great that they found their faith, that they love their God, that whatever it is that brought them past it, but we've got to step back and look at it from a different perspective than just that, because that's not the answer for everyone. And
No.
so you have, how many kids do you have?
I have 3.
You have 3? How old are your kids?
They are 17, 15, and 14.
Oh, goodness.
We feel your pain.
We do.
Yes.
We have 15 up to 20, almost 24. She'll be 24 in January.
Okay.
And so, when trying to raise young people who are not oblivious to the world and understand the things that are going on around them, it is important to us to talk to people who've been down different paths like you have, to help them understand, and not just so they don't make those choices, but
Help us
so
even understand,
yeah.
and to look for possible flags that might say, hey, they
But-
might be going down a path that
they shouldn't.
they shouldn't be, and it would give us an opportunity to help intervene.
And
if we
aside
can.
from that, there's having the compassion for those who are there.
Yes. Yes. That's
And
beautiful.
so, being in the life, did you see a lot of, I've heard a lot of people say that they felt like they were not a person as an individual from being in that life during that
No,
time.
you're not. You're a piece of meat. You're
A commodity.
You're goods. Yeah, you're goods to be sold to the highest bidder. It is. Hey, let me say this. You get to the truth, the real truth of people. When they feel no one's watching. When there's no ramifications of their action. You get to see the real truth of people, and it's not pretty. It is not pretty at all. But it's what it is. It's just what it is, and if you can understand that we will always have that sort of ugliness, in our species. It's just what we are as human beings. If we are left unchecked, there's no amount of debauchery we can sort of lower ourselves into. But on the flip side of that, there's also very gracious people and kind, and we're very loving at the soul of us, And so I saw a lot of nice gentlemen, I guess if you could say that about them, but where they just treated it like it's a transaction. There's nothing,
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to, you're just a piece of meat for me to do with whatever I choose,
Right. So you're saying that some of these people, it was more maybe a loneliness factor for them?
Yes, definitely. Most definitely.
I've seen some of the same. I've done phone operator stuff, and it's kind of the same thing. You have some that they just want no repercussions for their creativity and what they can imagine, and then you have people who just really, I don't know, they're out of sync with the world, and they're looking for a connection of some kind with some other human being. So you saw the same thing.
Yes, I saw a lot of that. A lot of that. And so that's, yeah, I think I learned that that was a very important lesson that I learned, that we're all hurting. Everybody's hurting, and then we're just looking to connect in some sort of way, connect to someone else that is, sees what you see, or feels what you feel. That's all that we're wanting to do, and we seek out ways to do that however we can.
I
Beautiful.
can see that. So what would you say to the 20-year-old you if you could?
Run, bitch, run away.
It's hard to
Run
say
far.
though, because all that path led you to where you are today though, so it's hard
Yeah,
to
had
say,
you taken
isn't
a
it?
different path, you may not be where you're at now.
So
No, it's very true. No, I wouldn't, I wouldn't change anything, because you're right. I wouldn't be where I am here now in my journey, here happily with my white chocolate. You know what he said to me earlier? It was so funny. He said, wait, what did you say? Oh, I wrote it down because it was a
that good.
it was that good. Uh-oh.
classic McAfee quote. Okay, here we go. Once you go white, it's good night to anything else.
Hey!
I gotta tell my dad that one. My dad and my stepmom are a mixed marriage, so that's always been some things for us.
Oh,
Excuse me, I
wow.
gotta jump in. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to horn in, but the real quote was, okay, I just added on to it. Once you go white, you'll know it's good night.
Ah, wow. My dad's gonna love
We
that
went
one.
over that in the beginning, Elliot.
My dad is going to love that one. Wow.
I've been thinking about how I would phrase something like that for about 30 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, never.
Never
That
thought
one
of
never
it that
crossed my
way.
mind.
Mm-mm.
Not once.
That's awesome. I feel
Okay,
like
I'm sorry. I have to do one more. I apologize for the racist jokes. Okay?
oh, I don't think it was.
But for those men in Bangkok, if you've gone yellow, it's probably a fellow.
Well,
I agree.
I'm not going to disagree about Thailand. I can't. Some of those lady boys, damn. I mean, I'm saying damn. I wouldn't hesitate either. So,
I'll tell you right now, some of those lady boys are so beautiful that
It's hard.
I have been
Yeah.
fooled. I have been fooled.
They
Like
are
if I ever
gorgeous.
find myself in Bangkok, I'm gonna have to check. I'm gonna have to grab.
or
gonna find
just
out.
go with
I'm
it,
gonna, like, hold on,
whatever.
Before we move forward with this, I'm gonna have to feel and make sure that you are what you are.
No trickery.
Don't
Be
trick me.
honest about it. It's
You
cool.
gotta tell me
but
ahead of
just,
time.
Let me know. So I'm not
Whatever
surprised.
floats your boat.
Right? We do not kink shame them on Pigstand. Absolutely not.
But I need to know ahead of time.
Right. Don't want to
'Cause there's some
surprise when we
things-
get
there's
to the
some
line.
things I'm into, and there's some things I'm not into.
Yeah. Eh,
Oh, goodness.
yeah. We're I kind of feel like you live in the same world I do, actually.
Okay. And next time around, I'm not going to do it this time. If you ever have Janice on again, I want just to sneak in to add massively more racist jokes like Eskimos and Native Americans. I can't possibly say it now.
Well,
I
we
just
have
wanna-
to be very careful
we're-
on those.
Yeah, we're walking a fine line with those on the platform, so we got to watch everything we say here. So those
are the fine line.
Those are the fine line. We can do that on what I can do is an off live broadcast interview and just record it, and then we'll post it on YouTube and see how fast it takes them to cancel our account.
Right, because that's how it goes these days.
would-
I come from a multicultural family, multiracial, so for me, I am the whitest one in my family, and it's always been a joke. So I've lived a lot of that, but I a lot of people are very sensitive to it, so we try to be very careful with all that.
It's no problem.
Well, Janice, we want to thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story with us.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely wonderful. I'd love to get John on sometime to talk about Baylis if he's willing to. We didn't want to.
We didn't want to ever.
If he wants to talk about Baylis, I would love to talk about Baylis because I've watched a lot of dumbass documentaries and I want to know the real story.
His side of it, because the everything else is somebody else's agenda.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
And I think there's not enough content out there with his side of the story.
Right.
Which
There's
kind
not.
of I was expecting, why these investigative journalists, never took the angle of, let's go and investigate what John is saying. Let's go and let's set out to prove if John is telling the
Correct.
truth or not. But they've all just sort of accepted this narrative of what they think it is, but there's no more investigating.
Right.
I think if they really wanted to know the truth, they could, very easily find out what happened exactly and know what John is talking about. And I know what he's talking about to be true just because of the things that I've seen and the things that's happened since I've been with him. And
part of his life. Yeah.
Very, very similar to what he explained to me happened in Belize. So
I'd love to see it from his perspective because all I get is what the media tells me, and we all know the media is full of shit 99% of the time. So
everybody has an agenda these days instead of having news, and it's a very big problem.
Yes,
there's a term for it that was invented 100 years ago called yellow journalism. They teach in journalism about yellow journalism. I know, I had that teaching in high school. Wow. So, it's not like these people didn't learn that. They learned it in high school and college, and they're still walking this line, and our integrity of our journalist has gone downhill. But I went and looked back, and it looks like that happens about every 100 years. They have to relearn the lesson.
Wow.
And, right? It's kind of weird the way it happens, but it's true.
Yeah, I would like my news filled with facts and not opinions.
Right.
Yes, exactly. That's it. That's all the news used to be,
Right.
And so far everything I've watched about John has just been opinions. I want to know
only one side of the story.
One side. I want to hear it from his side.
So
and I have a few questions about one of his YouTube videos. The uninstall video.
Yeah, we love it, by the way.
Every time I need to laugh, I watch that fucking video.
We had so much fun filming that.
I bet you did.
It was so funny that, people even still to this day think it's a real sort of ad for the software, and nobody kind of, they didn't really pick up that it was satire, kind of poking fun at all the news reports that were saying he was a drug addict and, about him living with the 7 girls. And so just really sort of playing that up. A few people even thought that was real cocaine on the table.
Oh, the part that killed me was the crazy straw.
Yeah, the crazy straw was perfect.
The crazy straw. Beautiful. When the crazy straw came out, I went, oh man, this is going to be good.
Yeah, that was so much fun.
Oh, you guys are a blast.
Yeah, you guys are amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
Of course.
Hopefully it sends a positive message to anyone that might be heading down that path, and maybe it'll help avoid.
Just hearing and teaching.
Even if they're there, even just being there in it, I think it helps just to know that you're not alone. Know that you're not the only one going through what you're going through. And it is very difficult to walk away from that. I just got lucky that I found John. But for a lot of women want to get out, it's hard to find it, go back to the square life or regular life, with a regular job, working at wherever you can find a job at. And my hat goes off to the women that make it happen, that can do that can make that, that change from that lifestyle and kind of suffer through, those minimal jobs to get to the other side of whatever their passion is and find a way to separate. I salute those women because I couldn't do it. I wasn't strong enough to do it. I needed, some support. I hadn't had anyone.
Well, not not only leave that life, but forgive themselves.
Right.
That's what I've seen a lot of, is
That's
the
very true.
people expect so much of themselves, and they get in this mindset of they're always letting themselves or someone else down, and instead of forgiving themselves and remembering they're human and it's okay.
That's very true, because there is a lot of guilt. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's very important. Oh, I'm glad you mentioned that. Thank you for sharing that.
Well, we don't want to take up any more of your time. I know you guys are busy and always doing all kinds of stuff. We look forward to the tweets from you guys and your shenanigans. And thank you so very much for joining us, both of you.
Thank you. Thank you again for having me.
You guys have a great day.
Thanks.
Thank you. Good night.